The Avadhuta Gita now turns to non-dual awareness, the vision that sees no separation between self and absolute. In this teaching, all distinctions dissolve into pure unity.
Right, exactly.
And if you want to explore the profound depths of these ancient teachings, please take a second right now to subscribe to the channel, Simplified Awakening, drop a like on the video, and, we really want to hear from you. Share your reflections in the comments below as we go through this.
Yeah, please do. We love reading those.
Absolutely. So welcome to you, the listener, to this deep dive. Today, our mission is, well, it's basically to examine a text that aggressively dismantles, all the cognitive frameworks we use to navigate reality.
It really does. It just tears them down.
It's intense. We're diving into Chapter 2 of the Avadhuta Gita, which is essentially a masterclass in Advaita.
Right.
We are looking past the introductory concepts of non-duality and really getting into the raw mechanics of a philosophy that insists the ultimate absolute reality and the localized self are, without compromise, the exact same substance.
Right. And that uncompromising nature is really what makes this text so is historically and philosophically significant, because chapter 2, it isn't a gentle guide, is it?
Not at all.
No, it's an epistemological teardown. It systematically targets all those dualities the human brain relies on to function.
Like good and bad.
Exactly. Good and bad, bondage and liberation, purity and impurity, inner and outer. It categorizes all of them as basically neurological illusions.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it demands that we confront awareness not as some, byproduct of cognition, but as an indivisible entity operating completely outside of human taxonomy.
And what's wild is that the text initiates this teardown by attacking something really specific right out of the gate.
Oh, the guru aspect, right?
Yeah, exactly. It attacks our sort of sociological and psychological projections regarding spiritual authority. Like, before it even explains the nature of reality, it completely obliterates our preconceived notions of what a teacher should look like.
It's so brilliant how it does that.
I mean, in verses 1 through 23, it presents this archetype that completely violates the traditional austere ascetic model. It says the vehicle for absolute truth might be, young or totally illiterate, not versed in the scriptures at all.
Right, or even just a regular householder enmeshed in domestic life.
Yeah, or even someone seemingly addicted to sense objects.
Which is, the cognitive dissonance that causes for the reader is entirely the point.
Totally.
Because historically, spiritual authority in ancient India, and frankly in modern Western wellness culture too, it's so heavily predicated on aesthetics.
Oh, 100%. It's all about the look.
Right. There is this deeply ingrained halo effect. It's a cognitive bias where we just assume that if someone possesses an austere, disciplined, or, traditionally holy outward appearance, their internal state must be equally pure.
We just take it for granted.
We do. Yeah. And the Avadhuta Gita poses this brilliant rhetorical question to shatter that. It asks, does anyone shun a gem that has fallen in an impure place?
Oh, that's good.
Right. And then it follows with the analogy of an unpainted boat. It says a boat ferrying passengers across a torrential river doesn't require vermilion paint or beautiful carvings to function.
It just has to float.
Exactly. Its sole utility is buoyancy. The text is demanding that we separate instrumental value from aesthetic value.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because we see this conflation of aesthetics and authority constantly today.
Oh, everywhere.
It's like the psychological equivalent of refusing to drink life-saving water just because the glass is chipped, or ignoring brilliant financial advice because the person giving it is, wearing sweatpants on a Zoom call.
That is a perfect analogy, yes.
We demand that truth be packaged in a way that flatters our ego, right? Or conforms to our cultural biases. So why are our minds so obsessed with the packaging of wisdom?
Well, the author understands that if the truth is fundamentally non-dual-like, if reality is just a singular, unbroken field, then insisting that this truth can only be accessed through pure or sanitized channels is just a profound contradiction.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, if you are only capable of recognizing the absolute in a pristine temple or, in the presence of a perfectly serene ascetic, you are still actively dividing the universe into holy and profane.
You're still trapped in duality.
Exactly. You're trapped. The grace of a teacher's wisdom, which the text identifies as the mechanism that pulls a person out of this ocean of worldliness, that grace operates completely independent of the teacher's resume or their outward behavior.
Which makes this a potent moment for anyone listening right now to run a little internal audit.
I highly recommend that.
Yeah, think about your own life, Where are you rejecting valuable truth or dismissing a crucial shift in perspective simply because the source is flawed or unexpected? The text really forces us to confront that truth doesn't need a pristine delivery mechanism.
It really doesn't. And, once the text strips away our obsession with that delivery mechanism, it pivots directly to the payload itself.
The core teaching.
Right, the ontological nature of the self. It attempts to define the indefinable by establishing reality as the unmoving one.
The unmoving one.
Yeah, it describes this naturally calm, formless, immutable state. And it relies really heavily on the metaphor of the sky, or the ether.
And the sky metaphor is, it's philosophically rich, especially when you look at the physics of space. Space isn't just an empty void, right? It's the necessary substrate for all physical events to occur.
That's exactly how the text uses it.
Like, it's positioning pure consciousness as the substrate for all psychological events. The sky holds the thunderstorms, the smog, the birds, the jet streams, but its fundamental nature is never actually altered by those things.
Right, it isn't stained by the pollution or torn by the wind.
Exactly. And verse 13 explicitly states the self does not move about on the earth or dwell in fire. It's not blown by the wind or covered by water. It pervades space, but is pervaded by nothing.
And that distinction between the substrate and its contents is really the crux of the whole teaching.
How so?
Well, the human brain is an evolutionary survival engine, right? And it evolved to identify exclusively with the contents.
The weather, basically.
Yes, the weather. When a storm of anxiety or like a surge of joy occurs, our cognitive default is fusion. We become the storm.
Oh, absolutely. I feel that all the time.
We all do. But the text is demanding a radical disidentification. It's saying, you are not the weather. You are the eternal unblemished sky in which the weather is just, temporarily expressing itself.
I really want to highlight this specific moment for everyone listening right now. The text declares that the self is entirely beyond division. It completely eradicates the boundary between subject and object. Just listen to the formulation of verse 11. Where there is such a natural being, how can there be I? How can there be even you? How can there be the world?
That verse is the nuclear core of Advaita.
It's mind-bending.
It dissolves the entire phenomenological architecture of human experience. Because, our baseline reality is structured as a subject navigating a landscape of objects.
Me versus the world.
Exactly. But the text asserts that this subject-object division is just an evolutionary heuristic. It's a hallucination required for biological survival, but it is not an ultimate ontological truth.
So there's no observer separate from the observed?
None. There is only the indivisible sky of awareness.
But, okay, let me play devil's advocate here. From a purely pragmatic standpoint, how does one actually survive while holding this non-dual state?
That is the big question, isn't it?
If I truly drop the concept of I and you, how do I navigate the real world? Like, how do I honor legal contracts or maintain boundaries or literally just look both ways before crossing the street? If there is no I who is listening to this deep dive, who is paying my mortgage.
What's fascinating here is that the friction you're identifying is exactly why later Vedanta traditions formalized a crucial distinction. They split it into paramarthika, which is the absolute reality, and vyavaharika, which is the relative functional reality.
Oh, okay. So they acknowledged the problem.
Totally. The text isn't suggesting you induce localized amnesia or, lobotomize your brain's executive functioning.
That's a relief.
Right. The default mode network, which generates your autobiographical sense of I, is a highly effective biological tool. It pays the mortgage. It looks both ways before crossing the street.
So the I isn't the problem.
No, the suffering doesn't come from the existence of the I as a tool. The suffering comes from mistaking that tool for the totality of your identity.
Oh, wow.
Non-dual awareness allows the functional I to operate just as a temporary cloud formation, while your primary identification rests as the infinite sky.
Okay, that reframes the entire human experience for me. It explains why daily life feels so chaotic, despite our underlying nature being this unmoving sky. The chaos is a property of the weather, not the sky itself.
Precisely.
And this transitions seamlessly into how the text addresses the mechanics of the mind and the physical world. It introduces this other powerful analogy about the mind.
The bubbles.
Yes, the bubbles. Verses 7 through 9 describe mental modifications, like our thoughts, worries, ignorance, as arising and dissolving like bubbles in water.
And the physics of a bubble is just a perfect topological analogy for non-duality.
How so?
Well, think about it. A bubble is not an alien entity invading the water. It's simply a temporary geometric deformation of the water itself.
It's just water.
Exactly. It is water expressing itself as a sphere filled with air. And the Avadhuta Gita uses this to solve the classic philosophical problem of dualism, the split between spirit and matter. The text insists that Prakriti, the relative physical universe, is fundamentally non-different from Purusa, the absolute spirit.
And the text proves this with a really interesting phenomenological analogy about water, right?
Yes, it notes that pungency, coldness, or softness are non-different from the water they describe.
Like if I dip my hand into an ice bath, the coldness isn't some separate thing swimming around in the water.
Right, it's not an independent entity. It is the fundamental expression of the water in that state. And the text is applying this exact same logic universally. The physical universe and all our cognitive stressors are non-different from the spirit.
Which is why the text calls the perception of duality a perversion.
It does. It uses the analogy of seeing multiple moons on a clear full moon night.
When there's only one moon.
Exactly. If you see 3 moons, the flaw exists in your visual cortex, not in the celestial mechanics. When we look at reality and perceive a million separate, distinct threats and objects, we are basically experiencing a cognitive distortion.
I feel like this has massive implications for the modern epidemic of information overload because we are perpetually bombarded by separate data points, right? Emails, the news, social media algorithms, our to-do list.
Oh, it's endless.
And the brain processes each of these as a distinct moon, a separate attacking entity requiring a response, and we just get completely paralyzed by the sheer volume of it all.
We really do.
But if we internalize this teaching, if we see every notification and every crisis as just a ripple on the exact same continuous pond of awareness, the overwhelm just vanishes.
That recontextualization is incredibly profound because you don't overcome information overload by trying to aggressively filter the bubbles or fight the ripples. You overcome it by recognizing the substance they are made of.
They're all just water.
Exactly. Which brings us to another critical moment in the text. I want to point out the assurance it gives about what this indivisible unity actually feels like.
Yeah, please highlight this moment for everyone listening. This is key.
In verse 24, it says, just as water poured into water has no distinctions, so awareness is a seamless whole.
Water poured into water.
Think about it. Poured water is the ultimate expression of seamless integration. You cannot retroactively locate the boundary line between the first cup of water and the second.
No, it's impossible.
The text is explicitly telling the listener that freedom from cognitive categories doesn't result in an emotionless, dissociative state. You don't become a robot immune to the coldness of the water.
Right.
Rather, you recognize that the coldness, the bubble, and the act of perception itself are all just a single, unbroken continuum.
Okay, so intellectually, I grasp the physics of the water in the sky. But the inevitable question is, how did the ancient yogis actually try to realize this?
Ah, the methodology.
Right, because the text walks us through the mechanics of concentration in Fitri, verses 15 through 20, but it does so only to show us what lies beyond it.
Let's track that meditative progression. Because the yogic tradition maps out a highly specific trajectory for attention. You begin by anchoring the mind to a gross object.
Like staring at a candle flame, or focusing on the breath.
Exactly. A physical sensation or visual focal point. And as your neural synchrony increases, and that default mode network we talked about quiets down, you transition to a subtle object.
Like repeating a mantra or holding a thought?
Yes. But the critical phase shift happens when the concentration becomes objectless.
Objectless concentration, what does that even mean?
It's called nirvikalpa samadhi, and it's a fascinating state. In modern neurological terms, our brain's predictive processing engine constantly requires an object to anticipate and model.
It always needs something to chew on.
Exactly. But when the practitioner deliberately drops the object of focus while maintaining a state of high physiological arousal and hyper-awareness, that predictive engine starves.
Wow.
And what remains isn't just a blank void. It is raw, unconditioned consciousness, totally divested of all contents. The text calls this state the nectar of naturalness.
The nectar of naturalness.
Yeah, and it identifies it as the only infallible remedy for the poisonous universe, which is delusion.
So what does this all mean for us? Because the text uses this beautiful analogy here about a coconut to explain the layers, right?
That's a brilliant stratification of identity, yes.
It says that external existence is the universe. Then the inner existence, our mind, our intellect, is Bhakti. But true realization requires knowing that which is more interior than the inside.
Like the water hidden deep within the kernel of a coconut.
Yes, the hard outer shell is our physical reality. The thick white meat inside is our psychological layer leg, our personality, our memories, our ego.
And it's funny because most modern psychological and self-improvement frameworks terminate right there at the white meat.
They really do.
We spend lifetimes analyzing and optimizing the white meat.
Huh.
But the Avadhuta Gita demands we penetrate past that psychological layer entirely to discover the sweet water at the core, which represents pure, objectless awareness.
I mean, the modern world keeps us so obsessed with just polishing the coconut shell or managing the white meat. This deep dive is really an invitation to just drink the water inside.
That's a beautiful way to phrase it. And drinking that water radically reorients our relationship to existence, particularly regarding the ultimate dualities that terrorize humans.
Life and death.
Exactly. Life and death, bondage and liberation. As we move deeper into Chapter 2, the text confronts the concept of mortality and systematically deconstructs it.
It destroys these concepts completely. I mean, it uses the broken pot analogy in verses 25 through 29. It says, when a pot is broken, the space inside it simply dissolves into the universal space. Similarly, when the body falls away, the yogi dissolves into the supreme self.
This is where it just bypasses all our buffering mechanisms against the fear of death.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if you think about a coffee mug, right? The space inside the coffee mug isn't ontologically different from the space out in the solar system.
Right, it's just a local geometry enclosing a specific volume.
Exactly. It's a single continuous field that's just temporarily intercepted by ceramic. When the mug shatters, the space doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't die. It just stops being contained.
Which is such a massive shift from traditional religious thought, because the text explicitly attacks the traditional Hindu belief that a dying person's last conscious thought dictates their next life.
Oh, wow. It goes right after that dogma.
It absolutely does.
Mm-hmm.
For the realized yogi, the text says this is false. Their destiny is transcendental. It's beyond thought entirely. There is no path, like the path of gods or the path of smoke, for the enlightened. You cannot travel to a destination you already encompass.
I want to explicitly highlight this moment for you listening right now. Emphasize this profound teaching. Bondage and liberation are illusions. Listen to the logic here. If you are never actually bound, you cannot be liberated.
It completely collapses the concepts of bondage and liberation. You cannot liberate a space that was never truly confined by the pot to begin with.
The ceramic wall was an illusion of separation.
Yes. And because of this, the author aggressively dismantles the deeply entrenched religious dogmas of the era. The sociological implications here are staggering.
Oh, particularly verse 29, right?
Right. The text boldly states that dying in a designated holy place yields the exact same ultimate reality as dying in the house of an untouchable, which was the lowest, most impure social stratum in ancient India.
That is a massive dismantling of religious dogma.
It's an absolute ideological demolition. In a deeply stratified society obsessed with ritual purity, where people would endure grueling pilgrimages to die in sacred cities like Varanasi, to say that dying in an impure place is exactly the same, it's revolutionary.
Because space is space. Whether it's encapsulated by a golden chalice in a high temple or a cracked clay pot in a gutter.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this removes all fear of death. You don't have to achieve a good death. You are just a pot breaking.
Which is incredibly liberating. But it introduces a radical rejection of mechanics, too.
It does.
I mean, if death doesn't matter and bondage and liberation are illusions, what happens to all our spiritual practices? What about our self-help books, our optimization routines?
The Avadhuta Gita addresses this head-on in verses 30 through 39. It systematically negates all spiritual mechanics.
All of them.
All of them. Because the true self is never tainted. So it says, no Vedas, no initiations, no closing of the nostrils in pranayama, no gazing techniques, no postures, no nerve current manipulations.
Wow, it just throws out the entire yogic playbook.
It even negates all the symbols. No geometric spheres, no mudras like hand postures, no images, no sacred jars. Ultimately, it says the enlightened mind goes beyond injunctions, which is what you must do, and prohibitions, what you must not do.
Yeah.
It's just completely transcends purity and impurity.
Okay, let me put on my learner persona for a second.
Go for it.
Wait, so I don't need to wake up at 5 a.m., do my breath work, and visualize geometric shapes to be enlightened?
Nope.
I mean, isn't this philosophy just an invitation to laziness, an intellectual alibi for apathy? If there's no cause and effect leading to enlightenment, why shouldn't I just abandon all practice and do nothing?
It's a fair question, and the text anticipates that exact friction.
Yeah.
But the author isn't saying these practices are bad. It's saying that the absolute cannot be manufactured by breathing a certain way or holding your hands in a specific shape.
So it's a category error.
Exactly. Cause and effect belong strictly to the physical world, to time and space. You manipulate a variable to produce a physiological outcome, but the self is entirely beyond cause and effect. You cannot use a causal mechanism to manufacture an uncaused state.
Oh, I see. You can't use an instrumental tool to build something that already exists in totality.
Right, so it's an invitation to freedom, not laziness. You can still do those practices. You can wake up at 5 a.m. and meditate, but you do them out of joy.
You do them as an expression of wholeness.
Yes, not out of a desperate, grinding need to fix a broken self, because you are already whole.
Yeah.
You do the breath work because it feels pleasant for the clouds, not because you think it's going to create the sky.
Oh, I love that. Doing it for the clouds, not to create the sky. That paradigm shift completely neutralizes the exhaustion inherent in constant self-improvement.
It's a huge relief.
Let's summarize the sheer density of the journey we've just mapped out today, because this was massive.
It really was a deep dive.
We began by overriding the ego's demand for aesthetic perfection in our teachers, recognizing that the unpainted boat doesn't need vermilion paint to cross the river.
And then we explored our true nature as the indivisible sky, confronting the illusion of the subject-object divide.
Right, and we recognize that our cognitive stressors, our thoughts, are merely bubbles, temporary deformations of the exact same continuous water that makes up our awareness.
We bypassed the white meat of our psychological narratives to access that pure, objectless water at the center of the coconut.
Then we dismantled the terror of mortality and the rigid hierarchies of spiritual purity by understanding that the breaking of a clay pot does nothing to alter the fundamental continuity of space.
And finally, we dropped the heavy mechanics of trying to achieve liberation, realizing that we cannot manufacture something that was never fundamentally bound to begin with.
The modern resonance here is just undeniable. In a hyper-fragmented world obsessed with optimization, non-dual awareness offers this radical, immediate wholeness. You don't need to put the pieces of yourself together because you were never broken.
It's the ultimate relief from the burden of constant becoming.
And that perfectly distills our closing takeaway. If you carry one axiom away from this analysis, let it be this: non-dual awareness is the vision of freedom.
And before we conclude, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over. If the mechanics of this chapter hold true, if there is no you to improve and no state to achieve, what would you do with your life tomorrow?
Oh, that's a great question.
Who would you be if you dropped the heavy burden of becoming better and simply allowed yourself to be?
That is the exact question this text demands we answer. Let the physics of the broken pot and the indivisible sky work on your mind tonight. And as you process that, please ensure you subscribe to the channel, Simplified Awakening.
And drop a like on the video.
Yes, drop a like. And we genuinely want to read your thoughts, so please leave a comment. How does recognizing your stressors as mere bubbles alter your approach to information overload?
I can't wait to read those.
Suggest that you continue on this journey with us by joining the deep dive into Chapter 3, where we will rigorously explore the ultimate freedom from bondage. Until then, keep diving deep.